A German soldier on the Eastern Front, somewhere near the Caucasus, 1942. He hears it before he sees it. A whisper in the dark sky, wind over fabric, no engine, no warning. A shadow passing overhead against the stars, small, slow, silent. By the time he understands what the sound means, the bombs are already falling. They gave it a name, Die Nachthexen. The Night Witches. They flew a plane so old it was originally built to teach teenagers how to fly and to dust crops. No radar. Many had no radio. They had no guns to fight back with. For the first 2 years of the war, they flew without a single parachute between them. Very few ever collected the Iron Cross. Because the women flying that plane weren't lucky, they were better than the men hunting them. By the fall of 1941, the Soviet Union was losing the war. German forces had driven deep into Soviet territory. Leningrad was surrounded. Moscow itself was within reach. Soviet women wrote to recruiting offices by the thousands, asking to fight. Most were turned away. One of them was already famous, Marina Raskova, a record-setting Soviet aviator. She had something almost no one else asking had, direct access to Stalin. She petitioned him personally for real combat units, made up entirely of women. In October 1941, Stalin said yes. Order 099 authorized the formation of 3 all-female air regiments. Young women reading the recruiting notice. One of them would become the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. When the regiment was assembled, it needed a bomber. What it got was a trainer. The Polikarpov Potu, designed in 1928. Used for over a decade to teach teenagers how to fly and to dust crops on collective farms. Top speed, roughly 94 miles per hour, slower than some cars. It had no radar. Most had no radio. It carried no defensive guns. The extra weight of parachutes was cut. If you were hit, you had 2 choices. Try to land the burning plane, or go down with it. By any conventional military logic, the Potu should have been a death sentence. It became one of the most maddening aircraft the Luftwaffe ever faced. A German Bf-109 banking hard, unable to slow down. Chase too fast, and you fly straight past your target. Slow down enough to hit it, and you might fall out of the sky trying. The women learned to make it disappear. Raskova's recruits trained at Engels, on the Volga. Most were teenagers and young women in their 20s. Students, factory workers, some barely out of school. The uniforms they were issued were men's uniforms. Many cut their hair short. They were compressed through a full flight training curriculum in months instead of years. Navigation, bombing runs, aircraft maintenance. Everything they learned in a single brutal winter. Skepticism, condescension, in some cases open contempt. Male pilots joked about the little chauffeurs and their toy planes. The regiment answered that with results. Night after night, they flew. And night after night, they came back. By 1943, the regiment carried a new title. The 46th Taman Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment. The doubt didn't disappear, but it got quieter. Here is how a Night Witch's mission actually worked. 2 women per aircraft. A pilot, and a navigator who doubled as bombardier. They flew in the dark, low and slow, toward a target. A supply depot, a rail line, an entrenched German position. The pilot did something that should have been suicidal. She cut the engine. The little biplane became a glider. The swoosh, the broomstick, the witch. The navigator released the bombs. Then the pilot restarted the engine. Before anti-aircraft crews could find them, Ground crews loaded bombs by hand under lantern light. They went straight back into the sky. 8, 10, in some documented nights as many as 18 missions before dawn. Somewhere between 23,000 and 30,000 combat sorties. More than 3,000 tons of bombs. In a plane built to teach teenagers how to fly. If the Night Witches had a face, it belonged to Nadezhda Popova. She joined the regiment after German bombers killed a close friend. She wanted revenge, and she got a cockpit instead of a rifle. More than 800 combat missions. 18 missions before sunrise. Loading bombs, flying out, gliding in, releasing, flying home, and doing it again. A pot riddled with bullet holes. 42 bullet holes after a single mission. And kept flying it the next night. She was not the only pilot with a record like this. The Germans who hunted them were simply outflown. None of this came without a price. More than 261 women served in the regiment. 32 of them were killed. Without parachutes, without armor. Every mission carried a risk that had nothing to do with skill. For crews were lost in a single night. They kept flying. From 1940 to all the way to the final weeks of the war. By spring 1945, they were flying along the Oder River. 23 women were awarded Hero of the Soviet Union. Some came decades after the war ended. Recognition was almost always slower than the courage that demanded it. The war ended in May 1945. The 46th Taman Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment was disbanded soon after. One of the most decorated regiments in the Soviet Air Force. They flew tens of thousands of sorties in an aircraft that had no business surviving one. They dropped thousands of tons of bombs without a single defensive gun. They did it without parachutes, for years. And they turned every one of those disadvantages into a weapon. Slow became invisible. Fragile became unpredictable. Underestimated became fatal. The Germans called them witches because they couldn't explain what they were hearing in the dark. It should have frightened them. Nadezhda Popova died in 2013. She had flown more combat missions than most fighter pilots in history. In a biplane that once dusted wheat fields. She reportedly said that she still dreamed of flying. An obsolete plane, no guns, no radar, no parachutes. And 30,000 missions flown anyway. By women, the Soviet military almost didn't let fight at all. History keeps underestimating the people who end up deciding it. 9 episodes in, and now the Night Witches. 9 stories the history books forgot. Subscribe to Valor Unearthed, new story every week.